The other thing that was important was if you knew kind of the demon's hierarchy or his placement or whatever, then you could know what kind of firepower you had to use as a priest or as an exorcist.
Yes, you spoke to it by name.
Exactly, right. You had to know the name. So there's a couple ways to classify demons then. One of the most common is classification by their domain or by their special area of knowledge or special area of power. So one of the most common of these is from the Lantern of Lights classifications. This is from 1409 to 1410, which was basically like an English pamphlet. And so this is where it classifies demons based on their primary sin that they are in charge of. And so this has Lucifer is the demon of pride. Beelzebub is the demon of envy. Satan, who they make a distinguishing with between Lucifer and Satan here, is the demon of wrath. Abaddon is the demon of sloth. Mammon is the demon of greed. Belphegor is the demon of gluttony. And Asmodeus is the demon of lust.
Oh, so you got your 7 deadlies.
Right.
Nice.
Now, there was also another classifications based on kind of the role of the demon, right? So this is from Alphonse de Spina, 1467. He said that there was demons of fate, incubi and succubi, the wandering armies of demons, familiars, druids, drueds, which basically mean nightmares, the cambions, which are basically the demons. They're like part human, part demon. They're from the intercourse of a human and a demon. The liars or trickster demons, the demons that specifically attack the saints, and then the demons that are there specifically to induce old women to attend witches' sabbaths.
Oh, yeah, man. It's a union. Tough gig. Double overtime on that one.
That's one of my favorite ones.
But I just, again, so not good enough just to have a whole bunch of fallen angels that are now, not only disgruntled, but will never know the light of God in heaven again. And shouldn't that be bad enough, right? We're going to put them into another bureaucracy, which sounds almost as laborious, if not more, than the one that they were in above.
Right. So.
Right, because now they have to deal with the, with the demands of the elderly.
Right. Bring me.
I never get to see him anymore. I
Right.
never get to see Satan anymore. The witches. When I'm supposed to fly. Where am I flying?
Those are the ones that drive the little bus, right? That the old ladies get on to go to the casino. Okay. Now,
I didn't win anything at Foxwood this time. Complete whip-off. I want to know who I'm going to write a letter to, because I'm writing a letter. Sorry.
No, it's fine. Now, there's another really...
We should not make fun of the elderly.
No, we shouldn't. I love the elderly.
It's terrible. I love the elderly, too. They're my favorite people.
The other one, another common one, is the King James classification. Now, this is from the dissertation titled Demonology. And this is the King James that wrote the King James version of the Bible.
Yeah.
So...
Yeah. Sort of now your gold standard of Bibles.
Yeah, absolutely. So he broke it up into 4 different distinct types of demons. There were spectra, which are demons or evil spirits that disturb houses or mess with solitary places. These are like ghosts, right? Poltergeists.
Okay.
There were demons of oppression, which are demons that follow people and cause them trouble, right? That oppress people. Demons of possession, which are the ones that will actually enter into the person and control them or cause them trouble inwardly. And then you have fairies, who he described as demons that prophesized, consorted with, or transported humans about.
Oh, interesting.
Now,
And sort of through the lens of like what was happening with King James at that time. It's kind of interesting.
it's very
too.
interesting. Yeah. Now, the probably though the one that is probably the best known for people is the idea of them being. This is from Sebastian Michaelis's book Admirable History. This one supposedly comes during an exorcism of the demon Berith, when Sebastian Michaelis was exorcising this nun. Now, this one is kind of the inverse of that pseudo-Dionysian hierarchy we talked about in the last episode. So, this one has a first, second, and then third hierarchy. The first hierarchy are angels or demons that were once seraphim, cherubim, or thrones. So you had Beelzebub, who is a prince of the seraphim. He is just below Lucifer. Beelzebub, Lucifer, and Leviathan were said to be the first three angels to fall. And they are Beelzebub is a demon of pride. Leviathan, who is... and so Beelzebub is opposed by St. Francis of Assisi. So this is, again, where we get this idea of the saints that oppose... And it's interesting. It's not the angels that oppose the demons. It is saints. So you have Leviathan, who is the demon of heresy, opposed by St. Peter. Asmodeus, who, again, was a seraphim, is the demon of wantonness and is opposed by St. John the Baptist. Berith, who is a prince of the cherubim, he is the demon of homicide and blasphemy and is opposed by St. Barnabas. Astaroth, who was a throne, he is a demon of laziness and is opposed by St. Bartholomew. Next, you have Varin, a throne, who is the demon of impatience. Seems a little bit out of place with this demon of homicide and wantonness, but whatever. Impatience.
Demon of homicide, and then the demon of not really wanting to wait in a line too long.
Right, the demon of the DMV.
All right, DMV demons. Well, that's pretty funny.
Right, and then you have Gressel, who is a throne, and Sonalian, who was a throne.
Boy, the thrones went down hard in this last round, didn't they?
They did. So Gressel was a impurity, and Sonalin was hate.
Purity, hate, waiting in line too long. It's all, you have to feel like if you were, again, not to anthropomorphize demons, but that you'd be like, I'm the demon of impatience. Like they must have just been solely impatient with that. They must have been like, that is ridiculous. That is the stupidest thing I've ever heard. Like, look at this one over here. You see this one? This one is homicide. So you kill other people. That is all that person does. Over, and it's like, but yeah, you get a little short-tempered and it's my problem.
Yeah. Interesting. Now, what's interesting with these that you're going to notice is that we're naming individual demons, right? Yeah. It's thought in a lot of these, it seems like the idea is that the demons that are of importance are the high up ones, and there's only a couple. With angels, it was like, oh yeah, the thrones. There was enough of them that you just called them the thrones, right? So it's interesting.
And the other thing that is interesting too in this is you have now female demons, right?
Yes.
At a certain point, you get demons are not just, which is not the same case with angels. Right.
Absolutely. Yeah. No, you do. Right, and it's not necessarily true. Well. It's interesting because the angels you had, it seems like they're all men. That's the thing, right? They all seem to be male, but yeah, that's interesting. Actually, you never do talk about that with demons. They're considered to be female demons.
There are female demons, yes.
All right,
but not so much with the angels.
That's weird.
What you gonna do?
Second hierarchy, Marie. The second hierarchy are those that were powers, dominions, and virtues. So you got Caro, who is power. He was a power. He was a hardness of heart. Carnival, that's one of my favorite ones. Carnival. Guess what Carnival does, Marie?
Makes you upset after having too much fried butter.
No, obscenity and shamelessness. The exact kind of things you do after a Carnival. And you have Uliet, who is a dominion, breaks the vow of poverty.
Okay.
Rosier, a dominion who is against sexual purity, and then Belias, who is a virtue who tempts men to be arrogant and women to be vain. Also specifically called out as the demon of gossips during mass. seems like Sebastian Michaelis had a bone to pick with I don't know, Betty next door.
A little old ladies. I'm just saying, I saw her out there. I don't know what she was wearing. It was white shoes, I'm telling you.
So funny. And then finally, the third hierarchy is Verrier, who was a principality, tempts men against the vow of obedience. Olivier, who was an archangel, but again, small a, tempts men with cruelty and mercilessness. And then Louvart, who was an angel, who at the time was thought to actually be possessing another nun named Sister Madeline. Now, what's interesting here is that, again, a lot of the times these lists are given with just names and then saying like they were this rank, and that's because a lot of this info comes from supposedly people exorcising nuns and other people, right? Like they're like, tell me who you work for, and they're like, well, okay, you got Jerry, who's kind of my direct supervisor, and then Billy, who's a little above Jerry, but he's more like a side by side kind of thing.
Yeah,
you know,
we never see him. He's on a lot of leave.
Right. So
Family problems.
It's kind of interesting. So it's hard to pin down. It's more hard to pin down, I think. And actually, a part of me wonders if maybe the reason why the names of the angels aren't given is because a name was thought to have magical power.
True. If you're going to summon something, you summon it by name.
Yeah.
Right. You have to call it out.
Yeah.
Which is, another big part in Bible, right? How Jesus had to call forth Lazarus by name, because if he didn't, all of the dead would have woken.
Yeah, absolutely. So other versions of this kind of go on. Another kind of a separate idea of this was basically listing out the demons as being a hierarchy based on, again, kind of these same ideas like a court, right, that we had with the angelic hierarchy. And so that's kind of the work that Simon Colin de Plancy wrote about in 1818. Written by Jacques Auguste Simon Colin de Plancy in 1818, is in his Dictionnaire Infernal, or the Infernal Dictionary. And so what he wrote is that there were princes and dignitaries. There were then ministers of the office. There were ambassadors, justices, houses of the princes, and then secret expenses.
What's the secret expenses?
Well, so the princes and dignitaries were people like Beelzebub, who was the chief of the hellish empire and founder of the Order of the Fly. You have Satan, who, of course, is the chief of the opposition party against God. He based this off of European kind of
bloody
stuff.
Splinters.
Yeah. You had Euroneme, who was the prince of death. Moloch, who was the prince of the country of tears. Pluton, who was the prince of fire. Pan, who was the prince of incubi. And then Lilith, who was the princess of succubi. You had a couple more, but whatever. Then you had the ministers were people like Adramelech, who was the Grand Chancellor and Grand Cross of the Order of the Fly. Ashtaroth, who was the treasurer. Nergal, who was the chief of the secret police. Baal, who was commander-in-chief of the armies of hell. The ambassadors were people like Belphegor, who was an ambassador of France. Mammon, who was the ambassador to England. Belial, who was the ambassador to Italy. Rimmon, who was the ambassador to Russia. It's interesting, right?
I like it. That's very specific.
Right. And so then you had the justices, who were like Lucifer and Alastor. The houses of the princes were people like Succor. Benoth was the chief of the eunuchs. Camo was the grand chamberlain. Melcom was the treasurer of payer treasurer, which I don't even know what that means. But then, so the secret expenses. Rollballs, who was the director of theaters. Asmodeus, who was the superintendent of the gambling houses. Nibos, who was the grand buffoon, and then the Antichrist, who was the charlatan and necromancer.
Oh, necromancers.
Yeah, interesting.
Bad.
So again, it's kind of hard for me to pin down which one of these is like the most common one or which is the most influential. Right? Like, which is the one that you've heard of the most, Marie? Or which one do you think you've heard of before this?
Beelzebub, right? Azrael.
Yep.
Azrael's big. Beelzebub, you got your, again, it's like, your Beatles. Mark. No, not Mark. Mark, I was going to say Matthew, Mark, and Luke, John, but it's like the inversion of that, even in some ways. But definitely, I would say those are the big two. I love the idea that they've sort of got this whole this whole spread that's taking care of the entire landscape of hell down to the theaters.
It's interesting, right?
Because what are they showing at the theaters in hell?
I don't know, old cartoons.
Listeners, tell us, what are they showing at the theater in hell? And I'll tell you what, it's not. It's nothing with Nick Cage in it.
It sure isn't,
my
Marie.
friends.
Now, in the modern days, one of the more common ideas about demons is that they are ranked by their cardinal directions.
Oh.
Now, this was present in other times too. This was present in the Middle Ages as well, of course, because like the directions of demons or the directions of the wind, the directions of the compass were thought to have magical power, right? And actually, if you saw Hereditary, you know already one of these demons who is associated with the West, right? Payman is the king or the prince in the West, and so these are said to be the demons that are directly below Lucifer, directly below Satan. In these kind of readings, they're most often put together. But again, I think if you've heard this episode, there's a little bit of disparity there. But so these are the 4 kings of hell who rule directly underneath the Lord of Hell, which is Lucifer. So you have Egin, or Egyn, E-G-Y-N, who is the north, Oriens, who is the east, Amaimon, who is the south, and then Paimon, who is the west. Which is interesting. So, and this is from books like the Grimoire of Pope Honorius, the Book of Abramelin, and the Ars Goetia as well, which we'll probably get into talking about a little bit. It's one of the books that supposedly was written by, great magician or whatever, and it's like, I talked to demons, and it's like, okay, sure you did, buddy. All right.
I talked to demons, and they told me this.
Yeah, it's weird. So, let's get to the letter B, Marie.
B? Oh my god, I love it. All right, hold on. B. I was trying to find... Bababat. Actually a female demon.
Ooh.
Nightmare demon that causes death during sleep. Associated with trees from the Philippines.
Interesting. That's a cool one.
Uh-huh.
So
I was associated with trees.
So mine is Baal.
Ah.
So
Baal.
Baal is the very first book in the Ars Goetia. He is considered a chief kind of demon, right? Is considered, and so in that reading is considered the first demon of the East. Supposedly, he speaks with a harsh voice. He has 3 heads: the head of a cat, the head of a man, and the head of a toad. Now, what's interesting with this, and a lot of these...
That's a lot. That's a lot going on.
It is a lot, and he's got the body of a spider, too. Which is kind of scary. So, it's interesting.
Uncomfortable.
Anyways, that's him. That's Baal.
All right, let's find... I am going to go... I'm rolling my dice, and I'm going to come up with... there's a lot in here with just like other name for Satan. So it's sort of like, no, that doesn't really count. They have Bast, which is the Egyptian goddess, which doesn't, I'm not going to count that in as, here we go, Barku. Barqu. Barku.
Okay.
The demon who keeps the secrets of the philosopher's stone. Barbetus, Duke of Hades.
Barbados. But yeah, Barbatos is actually in the Books of Magic by Neil Gaiman.
Oh,
If you remember, Marie, he's the little
right.
blue-headed pink
that's right.
nude demon guy.
Barbas, a demon of mechanics, according to some hierarchies.
Mechanics?
So a demon of mechanics. So when you are driving in Anaheim and your air conditioning gives out, Barbas.
Interesting. How about the letter C?
All right. Bum-ba-dum. C is for cookie. Charon, boatman of hell.
Yeah,
Right.
yeah, Charon is
Charon.
good, yeah.
I'm looking.
So okay, so
feel-
mine is Caim, C-A-I-M. He was an angel before the fall.
Yes.
He is now a president in hell. right? So he's like that kind of like that third level below Satan. When he first appears, supposedly, he appears as a thrush. And then he comes about as a human if you tell him, like, no, stop it, you're bad thrush, become a human. What's interesting?
Thrush being a bird.
Yeah,
right?
a bird. Now, what's interesting with him is that every time...
Awesome. You're out there screaming at birds.
Supposedly, if you... tell me your secrets! If you,
you are not him.
if you ask him a question, supposedly he will answer in burning ashes. So he can't speak, I guess. Now, what he actually can tell you, though, is that
I'm down with that.
In particular, why I think this is a fascinating one is that he has the ability to give you the knowledge to understand the language of animals, the languages of the trees and the oceans and the winds.
So why wouldn't his opposing saint be a CC?
See, I don't know, and that's the thing is that say like for instance in this book, when it gives the opposite power, it gives the name of an angel.
Oh.
So it's kind of this question of, again, a lot of this stuff there's no hard and fast rules on any of this stuff, right? Because what happens is you have the Protestant Reformation and things just kind of get whacked out of space. Yeah, because suddenly you go from having one main church that had all the answers to, an infinite number of churches, all with different answers. And so what do you do? Like, you got to pick one kind of, right? You have to pick one lane to be in.
Yeah.
But that's really hard. So which one do you pick? Who do you follow?
Who do you go with?
It gets very complicated. So, there's a lot of disparity even in this information, but the kind of general overarching themes are all about the same, right? It's fascinating.
I got a good one. So I have two other ones. I have Karo, which is just described as mercilessness. Mm-hmm. So yeah, mercilessness in case it's just a free floating demon, and then Corinolus, the demon of knowledge of liberal arts, appears as a griffin, also Grand President of Hell.
Interesting.
Chew on that, Harry Potter fans.
So,
I love the demon of the knowledge of liberal arts. I'm all like, damn, so that's why I got the degree. Oh.
So before we close out this episode quick, one interesting thing here. If you have been paying really close attention, listener, you will notice that all of the names we've said so far seem to end in L or IL or AL, right? Satan notwithstanding, right? But a lot of the names are like, Belial or like Kumariel or whatever. Like the reason of that, or the reason that is given usually, is that root ending there in kind of the Semitic languages meant of the Lord. And so since most demons were originally fallen angels, they had to have angelic names, or they were thought to have angelic names at the time. But that actually gave kind of a really difficult time for exorcists in the Middle Ages, and I guess in some ways today, maybe, where if a spirit gives you its name and it ends in L or Al or whatever, like Gabriel versus say like Gabriel, like how do you know which one is an angel and which one's a demon? And so, Dr. Thomas Rudd actually had a grimoire that he wrote, and so his reasoning or his idea here is kind of funny. It's basically to trick the demon into giving you its real nature by first getting their name and then asking them to basically commanding them with their name to state that all of the angels who fell deserved it. Basically, they deserve to be condemned. And so, in theory, what'll happen once you trick it into giving you its name, if it's an angel, it'll say, yes, they are meant to be condemned. But if it's a demon, they'll try to challenge you. Right? And that's actually a big part of, like, this history is, and it's a little dark for this show, and it's a little complicated, but like a tremendous part of this history of demons is, or the history of angels, the history of any of this kind of like a scientific-ish systematic breakdown of the celestial world, of the angelic world, the heavenly world, whatever, is devising these tried and true methods, almost like experimental methods, that will get you the results you want every time. And that's where a big part of, like, this book I have here, if it wasn't about something that I consider to be made up, right? Like, it would basically, like, it's like any other, a scientific dictionary, right?
Yeah, I was gonna say, how many of these grimoires do you own?
A lot. But like seriously though, I mean, this might as well be like a periodic table, right? They're trying to classify these things, they're trying to group them into sensible ways, and they're trying to use them in a way to make predictions and to make workable solutions. And when you get up to the time period of witch trials, of major witch trials, hitting head on kind of, the 1700s, the 1800s, where science, these methods have been effective in some areas, right? But they haven't done us any good in these other areas of, say, like spiritual belief or whatever.
Right.
And you come to a very uncomfortable period where the theologians, the people the exorcists, the whatever, have to start, well, why did it work for biology or botany? Why did it work for chemistry, but it's not working for demonology? Right? And so this is I think the reason I find this so fascinating, Marie, is that this is like, you can see the story of a pseudoscience here building itself, having real world consequences, and then basically being like, oh no, we were wrong. Like, we burned all those ladies for nothing.
We had all this. Yeah, we had this perfect recipe, or this perfect sort of incantation to figure this out that was supposed to be scientifically based, and it's not adding up to something.
Right, and that's I think the really interesting thing with these grimoires too, is that they read like cookbooks. It's like, okay, you get this thing, you make it of this metal, you do this, blah, blah, blah. Like,
you stir, a little pinch of salt.
Well, seriously, and it's like, the idea being that anyone could do it, right?
Right.
But so I think it's fascinating, this idea of this categorization, this hierarchy thing. Like, it shows you that we were thinking more about the world having to have a natural order, or the assumption that the world had to have a natural order.
Or that this was part of that natural order, right?
Exactly. Yeah. And in some ways, and I think that's
that we could make sense out of it, which I think is admirable for humans, right? It's also our folly that we're going to be able to make sense out of everything in the world.
Well, I was going to say, in some ways, it is in its own sense the biggest, like, all these people are writing about the sin of pride, right? And how Satan thought he knew so much and he was so smart and he was going to be able to do it better than God. And yet here you are writing a treatise on, like, you're treating angels and demons and God's creation like it's like it's different types of slugs, right? Exactly. In its own way, it's ironically its own kind of testament to the pride of man.
Well, it really does feature what was the origin of the problem, right? Yeah. That we're going to assume that we have this knowledge, and art and literature and music that we'll talk about, especially surrounding the devil, is always about the idea of it. This knowledge is attainable by humans, and it will be understandable, and it won't have a consequence.
Right. And so these first two episodes here, we kind of talked about this idea of classification. Where is the theology at this point in time? Trying to point some of these things out where, it looks like a science, or it's treated like a science, or whatever. The next episode here, we are going to go into now, how did culture shape this view? How did literature, how did the arts, how did theater, how did television, even in the modern day, right? how did
Comic books.
how did these things shape our view of demons and demonology, and how is that now part of our modern lore, and where is the modern lore today? Right? Are there
Absolutely.
people exorcising people in the modern day? There are. Should they be?
Yes.
Probably not. But whatever.
Debatable.
We're going to see. We're going to find out. It's going to be fascinating. All right, Marie.
It's going to be good.
Any last minute words?
All right. No, dear listeners. Just, if you are going to go, if there's a movie playing in hell, what do you think it is? Tweet it out. Because I think we'll have to have like a film fest.
It's got to be, it's got to be.
I just love that. I just love it.
It's got to be Fern Gully.
Oh.
Such a good movie.
Oh, that's pretty cold. Fern Gully. I was gonna say. I think it's La La Land.
Oh, maybe I never saw La La Land. The pride of humans.
Come at me.
Behold,
Come at me. I think it's La La Land.
behold, man's most grotesque
I know it's the
display
shape.
yet.
It's the shape of water.
Why?
Oh, I hated that. Oh,
That doesn't mean.
it's the worst. It's so bad.
Oh
my
boy.
God.
All right. Thank you so much for
Anyways.
listening, dear listeners.
Yes, thank you, and we will be talking to you soon.
Yep. Good night.